Hello everybody, Randy from Jacob's Triangle. Welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to talk about a mistake that I made, and that is I think I put the insulation that goes in the floor of the house in the wrong spot to be stored. Let's pop over to where I stored it and I'll tell you what happened over there. So let's go over there. Okay, so what I had done is I had brought the insulation when the walls was delivered. I brought the insulation over and I put it here inside the little storage shed, or this thing, shack. It's what I talked about when I was working on getting the tractor dug out of the building. This is part of that. Anyways, I put the insulation in here, and when I did that, let me take you off the tripod here and I'll show you that at the time there were still some roof panels on the rafters. So I wasn't terribly worried about it. And what happened is, back on here, there you go. And what happened is the strong winds that we had in October took the rest of the roof panels off, and then we had rain and it got the insulation all wet. I was thinking that since the insulation, it came in an outer covering that I thought was like a plastic covering, and it kind of is, but it's more like a net, kind of like what a feed bag, you know, the plastic feed bags that you get now. It's kind of like that. So it wasn't 100% waterproof. The insulation sleeves inside are also wrapped in plastic, which they are definitely plastic, but they're open on one end, so they're not 100% waterproof either. So with all of the wind, all the rain, my insulation got wet. So let's go ahead and go back over there and we'll check out what we have inside of the container the cave, now that I've moved it back over there. So let's go back. Okay, now we're back, and if you look behind me, let me get this out of the way. Okay, if you look there, this is the insulation that my wife and I moved over here in a rush because we had another rainstorm coming, and I put it out in a way that I was hoping would kind of let it dry out. And I came out here and I turned one over a little bit ago, and it's still pretty wet. Let me see if I can show you that. So that side looks pretty dry still, but if I can turn it over, you can see that is still very wet. And of course, because it's very wet, the wet spot wants to go to the bottom, so it's kind of hard to turn it over. So what I want to do, we have a little bit of a breeze today. I want to pull some of it out, and I'm going to lay it out on the floor of the garage and kind of let it dry out a little bit for a couple of hours. And then I'll put it back in the cave here. So I'll probably have to do that over the next few days, you know, taking the insulation out and laying it out either on the floor joists or on the floor of the garage to let it dry out. When we discovered that all of the insulation had, well, not all of it, a good portion of the insulation had gotten wet, my wife was concerned about mold growing on the insulation. I didn't think there's anything to worry about because the insulation is fiberglass. Fiberglass is an inorganic material. Mold needs organic material to grow on. So I wasn't concerned about it molding, but we certainly can't put it in the floor wet because then it will get the wood that it's adjacent to wet, and it is organic material, and that will mold. So we have to dry it out before we put it in there. And the paper backing that's on the insulation has tar impregnated in it, so I'm not terribly concerned about that right now. We do need to get it dried out because the longer that it does stay wet, the more likely the possibility is that it can start growing mold. So I want to start trying to get this dried out. Besides that, here in a couple of weeks, I think we're going to be to a point where we don't have to worry about rain so much. We're going to get started on the house again. So let's pull some insulation out and open it up and get it drying. Okay, so these two packages are going to be my control in my experiment to see if I can get the fiberglass insulation to dry out and still be able to use it. I'm pretty sure that I'll be able to, but time will tell. So I'm going to let them sit here in the sun and the wind and dry out for, keep an eye on them for a couple of hours, make sure they don't blow away. And we'll see what they look like in a couple of hours. Okay, the insulation bats have been laying out here in the sun and the wind for a while, and as you can see, some of them are starting to dry out a little bit and puff back up the way that they're supposed to, and some of them are not. That one's still pretty wet. These over here are still pretty wet too. And so, see, a lot of them are still pretty wet. So I think I'm going to have to just keep waiting for them to dry. I'm going to put them back in the cave for tonight because I don't want the wind to come up tonight and blow them away. It's starting to get late, so I'm going to start taking these insulation bats and putting them inside the cave so that they can lay out inside the cave and dry. One thing that's nice about the cave is that the sun heats it up pretty good during the day. Even though it can be pretty cold outside, it'll get nice and warm inside there. So I'm hoping that that is going to help evaporate some of the water out of these insulation bats. I'm not really sure about them because they're R19, and I'm just thinking that R19 may not be enough insulation. So I may just want to bite the bullet and go buy new insulation to put in the floor and do something more along the lines of R30. I looked it up, and California code does say that R19 is sufficient for the floor. So it would be up to code. But I'm in Northern California. We don't get all that cold in the wintertime, but it gets hot in the summertime. And it would probably pay for itself in the long run to have a little bit better insulation in the floor. So that's something that I'm going to ponder. I've been looking at the price of insulation, and it's going to be about $2,000 to put new insulation in the floor, but it may be worth it in the long run. So I'm going to ponder that while I put the insulation back in there and look around some more, maybe see if I can find some better prices on it. So until then, thank you for joining me today. If you like this video, hit the subscribe button down there, ring the bell down there, give me a thumbs up down there, leave me a comment, let me know what you think too. And until next time, wait a minute, there's something that I wanted to do. I almost forgot about it. I want to give a shout out to another channel. I want to start doing shout outs on a fairly regular basis, and the channel that I've decided to shout out today is Riley Homestead. If you have not checked out Riley Homestead yet, I encourage you to go check her out. She is she's very entertaining, she's very engaging, and she's just sweet too. I encourage you to go check her out. She does a variety of different things. The very first video, actually, it was Ridge Life that put me onto her. And he said in his shout out that she went through her pantry and she made that sound interesting. That was the first video of hers that I watched, and he is right. She actually made going through her pantry sound interesting. So go check her out. I'll put a tag up here in the corner, and I'll put a link to her channel down in the video description. So as I was saying, like, subscribe, ring the bell, leave me a comment, and come back again. Until next time, I'll see you then. Oh yeah, let me put all this insulation back in the container. Bye now.